Here we have our examples for Pythagorean theorem. Pythagorean theorem is a formula that's used with triangles that have a 90-degree angle. So there must be a right angle in order to use this formula. And what it's useful for is if you have two sides of a triangle, you can find the third side. So in order to kind of get started, we need to be able to label the sides. And so we would start from the 90 and call the side that's across from the 90, we would call that the hypotenuse. And in this case, we're going to give it the letter C. The other sides, those are the legs of the triangle. We can call A and B, and this is okay if that's a B and that's an A. But the really important one is that the long side, or the one that's across from the 90, is labeled C, because our formula is going to be A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So that never changes. So the hypotenuse is always by itself on one side. So let's substitute in. Let's take these values and put them in their places. Let's put the 3 where the A is. And let's put the 8 where that B was. So we don't know what C is. We'll just leave that. You could change that to an X if you want. So now this is asking us to take the base times itself twice. So this is really 3 times 3 to make 9. This is not 8 times 2. It's 8 times 8 to make 64. And then we'll have C squared over here. Now we're going to do this addition. So 64 plus 9 is 73. And the way that we get just C by itself, or to unsquare it, is by doing the square root. So we're going to do the square root on both sides. And you want to include like a good chunk of decimals. So when I do the square root on my calculator, I get 8.54, let's say. So then that'll be our final answer. And if you want to check, this we found is the hypotenuse. This should be the longest side. So we look at 8.54. Yes, it's bigger than side B, so we're good to go. So that's one way to actually kind of check your answer. In our next example, we have been given the hypotenuse. So we know the value of the hypotenuse. That makes this one just a little bit different. Some people know automatically that if they're looking for a side, then they need to subtract. So they think of those two S words, side and subtract. So let's put down our formula. I'm going to call that A and this B. And then we know our hypotenuse is 14. So we want to evaluate each of these. So this is 10 to the power of 2, or 10 times 10, which is 100. We've got 14 times 14. And of course, A squared is just going to stay the way it is. In order to get A by itself and like get rid of this plus 100, we're going to do the opposite of plus 100. Which would be subtract 100. So instead of adding 100, we subtract. That makes it 0 on this side of your equation, but we want to make sure it's balanced, so we subtract 100 from the other side as well. And so we would get 96 here. So now we're back on track. Like our previous example, we're trying to get A by itself. So how do we unsquare A? We take the square root of both sides. Now this is actually interesting. It was 7979, so I just rounded up that last 7. So, and if you had 9.8, that would be fine too. But you definitely want to be showing some decimals. So in our bottom example, this is kind of a word question, and nothing in it really tells you that it's Pythagorean theorem until you draw it out. So I really highly recommend that you sort of draw a picture of what they're talking about. They're talking about having a house and that there's a ladder leaning on the house. So let's get that ladder leaning up on that house. So to me, this is what I'm seeing in the question. So I've got the ground, I've got a ladder, it's leaning up on the house, and it's telling me that it's 3 meters away from the wall at the base of the house. So here's the base of the house, and here's the ladder. So I'm figuring that this distance is 3 meters. And the ladder itself is 15 meters long. Well, that's a really long ladder. So the question is, how high up the wall does it reach? So it's wondering, how high is this section here? How high up the wall does it reach? So there's one inference that we have to do, that we have to make. And that is that the house and the ground are at a 90-degree angle. If we can make that assumption, which I think for most houses it's true, that the walls to the ground are going to be 90 degrees, then we can start to kind of create ourselves a triangle that sort of looks like some of the other ones that we've been working at. Now, this picture is obviously no good because that's 50 and that's 3. This is not a very good picture, but that's okay. It'll still work for our formulas. So let's figure out what are our sides. So from this 90, we'll call this C. So going across from the 90, and then the other ones, maybe we'll call that A and this one B. And we'll put them in their place. So 3 times 3, will be 9. 15 times 15 will be 225. And we'll try to get x squared by itself. So we're going to subtract off the 9 from this side, subtract off the 9 from this side. I'm just going to continue my work over here. And in order to find one single x, I'll unsquare. So we can do the square root on both sides. And we come up with 14.697 meters, which is less. It's not much less, but it is less than the hypotenuse. So we know now how high up the wall that it reaches. If we calculated a number like 20, we know that we would make some kind of mistake because the number can't be any bigger than 15. The hypotenuse has to be the biggest number.